Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm sitting here with my wonderful team members. On my left is Liliana, our nutritionist, and on my right is Molly, who does the energy testing to figure out what the root cause of the disease is. It could be chronic disease or it could be cancer. Today, we're talking about the links of inflammation, infections that can lead to cancers. And what do we do when we see a new patient? So when I see a new patient, I make sure I evaluate and look for the root cause, but by regular blood work is really hard to do. So I tend to have them see Molly to do the bioenergetically testing, energy testing, checking the acupuncture point to see what the blockage is. And Molly will explain more in detail. And then I also make sure they see Liliana. Majority of patients who come to me, they say, you know what, I done my nutrition is perfect, I'm eating right, but there are some tricks, there are some fine tuning needs to be done, and it's done with our nutritionist. And also Liliana does the emotional stress, which is very important because if you have emotional stress, it hinders healing. Your cortisol level will be elevated. You will have elevated sugar, even though if you're eating perfectly fine, but if you have high stress hormones, you can never bring that sugar down. And as we know, the sugar feeds the cancer. So I'm gonna have Liliana now explain a little bit about the emotional stress.
So in our clinic, because we are integrated, we're looking at the whole person. And so often, many of our patients are very educated and often come in after they've exhausted a lot of their treatments, or maybe even this is a reoccurrence. And the one thing that I get more often than not is that they have not addressed their emotional issues. And so I have a wonderful device that I use. It's called eVox, which is a voice activation where I have a patient speak into the microphone, and I'm able to detect through this biofeedback mechanism what emotions are trapped into what organ systems that may be compromising their immune system. And so when I tell a patient that they want to look at their immune system as if it was their 8 or 9-year-old child, because we often have unconditional love, we have conditional love for ourselves, but unconditional love for our children. So when I use a child to say, okay, imagine that your immune system is your 8 to 9-year-old child. How would you go about living your life through the eyes of that child? Well, you make a lot more decisions based upon the well-being of that child. And so I say your immune system is no different. It works not on the executive function, but on the emotional atmosphere that it's in. So when I work with them with eVox, I'm able to be looking at from the time they were in their mother's belly till the age of 12, what impact their environment had on them. And so again, all limiting beliefs are just based upon misunderstanding. There was nobody there to tell you anything different. And so they began to live their filter through their mothers and their fathers and those that were around them and their what they perceived of them. And so the intention is to identify between self and others. When we start to look at mothers and fathers and generational patternings, we're able to unlock these generational, what I call toxic parenting styles, and then what is left within the patient. And so very quickly, we're able to establish what a therapist might do in talk therapy in 1 or 2 sessions to be able to work on how to reframe certain reactions that they might have that contribute to their weakness of their body. So when you start to really realize that you've got so much power just on really being mindful of what your mind is tracking on, then we can right there and then be able to what I call reframe. I say, if you have a thought that is making you angry or stressed out in any way, depressed, then you have to ask yourself, what story am I telling my 8 or 9-year-old child right now that is feeling very fearful or very anxious? And if I create an environment that's not very, what I would call good in a child's mindset, then why are we doing it to ourselves? And so we capture these thoughts, and instead of housing them, we have to basically tend to things we house, right? So I just imagine, put this in a dialogue bubble, allow it to go in a helium balloon, and just let it go out of the body. Or even better, I say, think of yourself as a high-tech Tesla spaceship, and you got a special room where you can put these thoughts, and you can shut the door and open it up and let it vaporize out to space. We don't need to house these. We need to recognize and capture them and move them out of the system with new ways of being able to react to our emotions, because they're all habitual. So I think working with emotion is one of the key for anyone. It doesn't matter if it's prevention or treatment, in regards of downloading so that the patient can cope much better with anything that's happening in their life.
Thank you, Liliana. Very helpful. And the body can heal itself better too when you're not emotionally stressed. And some patients don't even know about it. And after when they come and see you at least 3 times, they're like, I feel so much better. I'm doing so much better. I'm sleeping better. I mean, overall, all of us get stressed. We all need to see Liliana, actually.
We can't get away from stress, good or bad, right?
Exactly. And so we're going to talk about other factors. So a lot of patients who have the diagnosis of cancer, they tend to have a lot of viral infection, and they're not even aware of it, or parasite infection that they don't know, or heavy metal. Because, we don't realize why heavy metal play a key role. Heavy metal blocks our Krebs cycle, blocks our ATP production, and make our body anaerobic. As we know, cancer loves the anaerobic environment. So that's what Molly helps us with. She always checks the patient. She says, okay, what is it that's weakening you? If you want to explain that to our audience.
So patients come in and they might have had, this chronic issue, whether it's cancer or some other chronic disease that they've been dealing with for many, many years. And so what I do is I test through the meridian pathways to find out where they're in balance and where they're out of balance, because there's usually patterns where they're out of balance. I can see different patterns, and almost immediately I can tell if somebody has maybe mold or fungus or candida. It's how they're measuring and how they're coming up on my system. Or I never assume. As a side note, I don't assume. I see patterns a lot because I've done this so many, many thousands of times. I can see, if somebody has heavy metals, how it's affecting. Maybe it's affecting their brain. They'll come in and they'll say, I just can't think as clearly as I used to. And there's a little bit different because if you have fungus or a candida, it does affect your brain and how you think and how you can focus or can't focus. It's a little bit different with heavy metals. I usually get, if people have heavy metals, they get headaches too. So there's a lot of different things that, and it could be parasites. So a lot of patients that I have, I'll tell them what they need to do to help, like maybe eradicate the parasites or the fungus or the candida. And they go, well, when you tested it, the thyroid was low. Does this help the thyroid? Or this was low. Does this help balance, my liver? And what a lot of patients don't understand is everything is connected. So a lot of the patients are concerned about when they see the report and see that there's an imbalance in the liver or the kidney or the thyroid or whatever the system or meridian might be, they immediately look at the supplements that I'm giving them and they're like, well, I don't see anything. It says that I'm imbalanced. My liver's weakened, but I don't see a liver tonic or a liver support. And then I explain to them if, everything is connected in our body and there might be a parasite in your liver, and it's important that we get the parasite out because that will affect everything. And if your liver or your brain, because those go together, if your brain is toxic, you need a liver cleanse. So it's really educating the patient, because even though they're very educated when they come in, there's certain things that they are not aware of, because we're always getting educated. Yeah. Every one of us are constantly learning from each other and getting educated on our own. And then we share that with, all of our, our colleagues, because there's always new information. And as educated as we think we are, I always need to know more. We all need to know more because there's always new information coming out. And also the tests that we see patients over and over again, we see patterns that are very indicative of what's going on with that person and something that we can do to help. So all of this affects our immune system, which is so important. And especially right now with this coronavirus going on, the main thing is we need to have a strong immune system. And if we have fungus or mold or heavy metals or parasites, that's affecting our immune system big time. And that's why it's so important to have a clean body, a clean diet, clean, like how we think about ourselves, our mind, our mindset, our emotions.
And let me interrupt you.
Oh, no,
Interesting part is when you check my patient, the blood test shows that they have low functioning thyroid or adrenal. And then when you check, you say, you know what, your thyroid is functioning low, adrenal is low. So when I go over the patient's blood work, I say, you know, I think your thyroid is a little bit low, even though the blood number work is fine, but you see your body temperature is low. And also in Molly's test, it came your thyroid is low. And then they be like, oh wow, 2 tests, you know, the energetically and the actual blood test shows the same thing. So it shows like what we do is like hand in hand. It shows how patient is doing. And adrenal, a lot of people don't know, it plays a key role with your immune system. If your adrenal is suppressed because of the stress and you're not dealing with the emotional stress, or because you have candida or parasite that suppresses your adrenal, just taking supplement for adrenal support is not enough. You have to get rid of the root cause. So that's why it's important. I always use Molly, for example, because like patient have parasite, I know it comes up, I could see it on their blood, or I could see it on their ultrasounds when they have a cyst in the liver or in the organs, in the kidneys, but what do I use? What kind of medication? So that's what Molly helps me. She says, you know what, this patient tested for this and for that. So then I know, okay, I'm going to use these two. And the interesting part is a lot of patients say, can I do a stool test or other testing? Problem is it doesn't come out. Parasite love where they live. There's living, sucking your nutrition and blood in your organs. So whatever organ they're stuck on, they're not going to just decide to come down. So you have to kill them before you could see it. And a lot of my patients are seeing it.
I think we should probably touch a little bit, obviously, on food, because that's a major part of anybody's healing. Now, what you want to understand is that our brain is hardwired for pleasure, because if our endorphins aren't elevated, we could not run from a predator. And so when we're under stress, we've got this whole mindset of, you know, our body is just having a pharmacopoeia of chemicals. It's kind of giving us mixed messages because we're really not running and fleeing. But after these events are over with, especially stressful events, and our bodies dumped glucose for this flight and fright response, what happens when we are in a more relaxed environment? We're going to be craving things to replace the glucose that it dumped into our bloodstream, which usually is going to be something sweet, or something like a cookie or bread, or most oftentimes under stressful situations, people will want something salty and crunchy. So I always tell my patients, really pay attention to the foods that you're craving. That you crave, because they'll give you an indication of what is the emotional need that you are looking for, because you'll never find it in food. Salty crunchy is for adrenal stress, right? Their adrenals needing that salt. And so again, when you come home from work and you've had a stressful day, you know, we go for the chips and the salsa. And when we feel like somebody has overlooked us, we want chocolate, you know, we haven't been acknowledged. And when we feel like we just want mom, then we want our ice cream and our cheese and that whole dopamine mindset, right? And a lot of these have morphine effects to us, gluten, morphine, casein, morphine, and it really triggers that brain for an addictive mindset. So really our emotions set us up for the things we'd actually choose and desire. So when patients come to see me, the first thing I do is try to stabilize their glucose levels so they don't have cravings. You can have an emotional craving, right? You see something, go, oh my gosh, that looks so good, I want to eat that. But not just to sit there and be going, oh, I'm dying for a bagel, I want to have pizza. Those are real emotional cravings. And so, of course, our whole intent is to get people back to a natural state, equilibrium, which means go back to eating how our ancestors ate, you know, culturally. And, you know, we consume over 158 pounds of sugar a year. That's like ridiculous. So as Dr. Bita was describing, that cancer thrives off of a glucose environment. So my goal is to really teach people the science of food. What does that food turn into once you ingest it? What's going to be best for the condition that you have, the amounts that you need, so that we can really stabilize your blood glucose, so that you can make really healthy decisions and choices with the things that you eat, the way you think, and the people that you surround yourself with. So I think, you know, we covered pretty much everything. How about you, Molly?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. I'm really blessed to working with such a great team here and to help you guys to do best.
Thank you.